Hello, everybody. This is Jim McKeith, and joining me on the line is Ken Schaefer of Innovative Software, makers of FrameForge. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
Hey, glad to be here.
Sure. So, real quick, FrameForge is the winner of our Cool App Contest of the month. It's built with Delphi, and it's also got another big award, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
Yes, we received a Technical Achievement Emmy from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. So we're really excited about that.
That is really cool. I remember seeing that when you're in the little video, which we're going to show you in a second. I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. I mean, not only is it cool software, but to know that the field you've created it for also recognizes it as being impressive software, I thought was quite a feat.
Yeah, well, it's been a pretty good ride. We also received a Lumiere statuette from the Advanced Imaging Society, formerly the International 3D Society, for our support of stereo 3D filmmaking. So our award shelf is filling up, and we're really happy to add this one to it. Did you get a
Excellent.
statuette?
Yeah, we don't have statuettes yet. We need to do
Oh,
something.
come on. Okay.
I actually was looking through your site and stuff and saw the thing about the 3D, and I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. We'll put show the video now real quick. It's a nice little overview of. So you made this video for the award ceremony, is that correct?
Yeah, it was actually a written case study that the director, David Evans, who you'll see in the video, or at least here, put together for us. And then for the Emmys, we actually turned it into a video with his help.
Okay, very cool. All right, so here is the video.
There was a scene in Downton Abbey where Gardner knocks on the kitchen door and has a conversation with a footman through the open doorway. However, the kitchen set where the footman opens the door is at Ealing Studios, while the exterior side of the doorway, where the gardener is standing, is 65 miles away at Highclere Castle. Furthermore, the kitchen door on the set at Ealing opens directly onto the studio wall. The door in question at Highclere Castle covers a camera trap only 3 feet deep. Each side of this intercut doorway scene had to be shot weeks apart, and the actor playing the gardener was unavailable on the scheduled shoot dates at Ealing. Still, none of this presented a significant problem because the director used the FrameForge pre-production visualization software.
Hello, my name is David Evans, and I was the director of this Downton Abbey episode. Using the art department's technical drawings, I easily built and dressed an exact virtual version of our below-stairs set in FrameForge. This immediately answered a number of questions, such as how and if the camera would fit in the extremely tight spaces we were working with, and what shots I could and couldn't get with it in there. Also, since another character had to overhear the conversation in the doorway, the PreVis let me easily identify where best to position her in order to reveal her as the footman made for the door, something which was extremely important from a dramatic perspective. Finally, the program let me show my team a document that explained my shots and convinced them that my solutions would work. This is what FrameForge does for me that no other tool can. Even if I could have drawn an excellent storyboard, my DP would have been justifiably dubious whether it could actually be achieved with our lens package in the tight spaces we were working with, but he only had to put his eye to the finder once to see the accuracy with which FrameForge's PreVis represented the set. This sequence could have been a nightmare to execute, but thanks to my PreVis, the shoot was smooth and efficient, we got the shots just as I'd planned, and it all cut together beautifully.
This is the program in which David did all that, and a lot of people are doing similar and other kinds of things. We have a lot of actual visual effects supervisors. So if any of your folks out there are fans of like Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or The Flash, the visual effects supervisors use this software as well to help make those shows, and Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff like that.
All of those I'm fans of, so it's
Yeah.
neat to hear that this is behind the scenes for that.
Yeah, yeah. Also, like Merlin and CSI and all sorts of stuff.
You're still hitting. See, actually, CSI is the only one of those I'm not into.
Well, that's because it's not a sci-fi, show.
That's probably it.
But I believe we were actually used on Orphan Black as well.
Oh, I loved Orphan Black. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's a great one.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so it was interesting actually. I watched the video the first time and I didn't quite capture the fact that when they were showing the 3D scenes, that's actually coming from FrameForge, right?
yes, correct. That's stuff generated within frames. There's some of that I sort of recreated for dramatic effect, but yeah, it's all in the program, and I can give you a quick overview of how it works.
Yes, please do.
So it's basically a virtual film studio. It's designed after a television control room. So you have a series of monitors across the top here showing the views from virtual cameras. If I drag in a guy on the set, you'll have something to relate to. So here, this red thing's a virtual camera, and as I drag it in closer, we can see the frame changes and so on. But I just wanted to show like the different cameras. So I added a new camera just by double clicking, and so now we have it from 2 different views. And as we add cameras, they show up on these monitors here. So what we did, that's already the live camera. I wrote the program. I didn't know how to use it. So what we have is what's called a room builder mode. And this is how you can quickly match environments to exact settings. So for example, if we have a floor plan of the location. Here, let's do the Downton Abbey one, since we were talking about that. So this is a kind of not very specific floor plan, but what we do generally know is the width of doorways. So we will use that as a measure to get the scale of this right, because obviously we want it to match the real world as much as possible. So now what we can simply do is drag a ruler, and this ruler represents 2 feet 8 inches, which is the standard measurement for a doorway. Okay. So we hit finish, and bang, we now have our set on, our blueprint layout, floor plan on our main room builder mode. And then what we can do is we can just zoom into wherever we want here. And there's a way of, Alt left drag allows me to drag it. Yeah, I wrote the program. I should know these things. And so what we can then do is build these rooms very quickly. So we just go into a room mode, and then we'll drag in one for Carson's pantry, and we'll drag this over here, and he has a little cabinet. And so we then can add in doors. So there's a door here, there's a door here, and then 2 windows. Oops, it helps if I actually drop it in the right place. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just can't see it. Yeah, see here, it shows me what the width of the window is.
Yep.
Yeah, I should pay attention. And we'll drag in another one. Okay, so now we have a rough location. And if we go back to our blueprint mode, we now have our set up right here. So what we can do is we can then move one of our cameras in. And here, we're looking at walls, which is why we're seeing this strange view. But let's move this camera into here. Let's spin it around so he's facing the actor. And so now you can see that we're in this room we just built that's built exactly to scale. Oops, I went through a wall. If we want to put in an appropriate floor, we can go back into room builder mode and just drag in a floor. It'll automatically shape itself to the room. We can put that in as a carpet. And so now it's exactly filled. And if you see in this view here, we now have a carpet and so on.
Yep.
Let's open this door. So here's my window, and actually here, let's do something else. Let's put him over here. Let's drop in another camera. So now we're looking at him through the window.
Wow.
Okay, so we're looking. So just to orient everybody, if I'm going too quickly, we built these 2 rooms. They have doors and they have windows here. So we did base that on the layout of the from the blueprint layout. So now what we can do is, if we want to do a camera move so that we are dollying outside the room and we want to see what we're going to see of him, we can do that, and we see exactly what it is from the perspective that the camera will actually see. And so if we want to crane in, up or down to get a better angle, we can zoom in. We can pretty much do all of the kinds of things that we would actually be able to do on set. And so in this case, the director or cinematographer, VFX supervisor, or whoever, can determine if we have our guy, staring out the window dramatically, and let's give him an expression, which we can do simply by clicking on the expression wheel, and so it'll. Can you make out what he's doing?
Yep.
Okay, so that we can change his expression simply by choosing the expression wheel. So he's angry and looking out. So we can see exactly where he's going to need to be in the room, that if he's right at the window, he's this size. If he's across the room, he's this size. If he has to be across the room and we want him larger, then we would need to dolly out and zoom in, because that gives a different when you zoom in, you get spatial compression, and
Right.
so it looks different.
Exactly.
So you will able to plan exactly what your camera is going to see, and you can actually drag in physical camera equipment. So if we go over here, this object library is where we drag in all of the objects that are going to be on the set. So I dragged in an actor, but if this is supposed to be a kitchen, for example, which I think it was, but I can't remember, we simply go to the kitchen category, open it up. We can drag in some appliances. Now the program's fairly smart because it knows that you want to put things against walls, not through walls. So I don't have to be all that exact. If I put it so that it's partly through a wall, you see it bumps it back into the room. Did you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so I can dress this set. All of these things here are control orbs. So it allows me to dynamically spin this, because as you can see here, it came in the wrong way. I can also numerically spin it. So I can say this is minus 45 degrees. So I could do it dynamically or numerically, and then I can put this here, and we can keep building the set really quickly, and then, he's working at the stove, and so on. I can put, I can put pots and pans down on the stove. So let's see, what do we have? We have pots and pans. So, we'll put a pot on the stove. Now, one of the cool things, which I think you just saw, is the automatic relationships. So what the idea is that because this is specifically designed for pre-visualization, it knows that the actors are supposed to be interacting with the props. So it has automatic relationships, so that when I drag a prop to an actor and there's an appropriate behavior, it will automatically do it. You can override that. So then I can hold the pot left-handed, I can hold the pot right-handed, and I have complete control over all of the actors. So I can put the right arm, for example, on his forehead dismayed, because he's burned the what's in the pot. I can manually control things so that if for some reason he needs to be swinging the pot over here, or pouring it out or whatever, I have complete manual control over those kinds of things. I can spin him so that he's twisting to face us, so on and so forth. So he's burned the pot. So when I go into the editing mode, which I simply do by clicking on the posing control orb. So this is the pose control orb. And if I just click it, I go into an editing mode where it shows his body here and the joints So right now it's a mid joint. If we wanted to move his leg, I could click here, and then that would move his leg. Yeah, it's rotating it. Let's try doing it this way. Yeah, you can see him. And we have existing poses that we can apply, and they can be built, assembled. So a full pose is in angle brackets, like walking. That affects the whole body. A partial pose isn't. So, for example, I can add his eyes closed because he's further in dismay. I don't know if you could really see that.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's zoom in on this. Oh, yeah, sorry, wrong mode. Let's try that again. Yeah, so we can see, oh my God, it's horrible. So we can do all of that, and then we can snap shots, which then we can add script data, we can add that kind of thing, and then it shows up over here. We can also do animatics, which is like animation, but is generally sort of rougher. Oh, I don't want his leg. I want his torso. Oh, I think it was actually a mid-torso that I did. Okay, so what that allows me to do is create an animation. So if, for example, I want him to put the pot back on there as we zoom in on his face, and say dolly around him. Oops, wrong way. Actually, that was the right way. I just need to pan. Okay. And we'll pan, and we'll dolly, and we'll pan. And we're seeing the back of the wall, which is why. See, this is the kind of thing that is sort of appears like a pan, but it's exactly the stuff you'll need to deal with on set.
Yeah.
So we'll have him look into the camera. Let's have him open his eyes. Oops, I didn't want him to look at that. Here, let's undo that. Let's have him expressions. Dismay. So we can then snap this shot. So we now have two shots here. Here and here. And then if we want, we can create intermediates, and I'm just going to do this very low res just to give you this sense, but make it fast. So what this will do is this will create the intermediates between the two shots so that we can see the camera motion and his acting. So then we can play it as a slideshow, and bang, we have a very rough thing. And we just did that with two shots. That can be done much more complexly. Is that a word? Complicatedly? I don't know. Whatever. And if you actually have them move across the room, they'll automatically walk, and all of those kinds of good things. Oh, the one other thing I want to show you before your audience goes, okay, enough of the filmmaking stuff, is physical camera equipment. So one of the cool things that you can do is, I was just using a floating camera, which is just a virtual camera representation. But I can also lay down physical stuff, like I can lay down dolly tracks. They will automatically snap together, so that I simply drag this to there. It snaps together. Drag in another one here. It snaps to this guy. I can then drag in a dolly, and we'll put the dolly here. It'll automatically snap to the track. Actually, this guy doesn't look like he's quite line. Yeah, there we go. So the dolly snap to the track. Actually, we want it facing, the other direction. So let's re-snap it. There we go. We can put on a camera head. Where is that? Oh, heads, 2 axes. And basically, this is just what the camera sits on. It automatically snaps to the dolly, and we can drag in a camera. And it automatically also snaps to the dolly and the head. I'm going to drop in another camera so that we can see this. So now we have our camera dolly, it'll automatically follow the dolly tracks. So you can see how it's doing the curve.
Wow.
And it will automatically be limited to the capabilities of this camera equipment. So
Wow.
it allows you to only prepare shots that you actually can create. So, for example, if we then pan back, that's the camera that we were looking at here. Let's take this door. Let's open the door so that we can see through. And so now we're dollying around the tracks. So I don't know if you look up here, you'll see that as I'm dollying, it's following the tracks itself.
Yep.
I guess there's a delay before you see it. But anyways, and then because I'm looking through the camera, we get the same messages of, this is as much as this camera can do, so that you don't end up planning shots that you won't actually be able to shoot.
Wow.
So that's the basic premise of the program. I can talk good. Yeah, anyways. And I could show you a lot more, but I think you get the sense of that.
No, this is great. I watched a couple of videos on your YouTube channel too, and it was really quite cool. But seeing this go together like this, and I don't have any experience in actual video movie production like that, but I think in school we did some storyboards for things.
Right.
And I know that seeing like the behind the scenes stuff, making storyboards can be a lot of effort, but you're making, and they don't capture all the details, but you're able to make these very detailed storyboards that have all the details about, hey, where can the camera be? How big is the camera? What space does it take up?
Right. And in addition to that, we also get all the camera information. So for example, when we snap this shot, oops, that's not what I want to show you. When we snap this shot, we not only get the image of the frame, which is what a storyboard would normally be,
Right.
but we also get the camera, the angle of view that it's seeing. We get all the information about the camera, its height, its focal length, its angle of view. We can also get the information as to what hardware was used to shoot that, what actors were visible in the shot. But so there are three main benefits over the traditional storyboard. And one is that you can only prep shots that are possible to shoot, which is a big deal because with a storyboard, it's drawn with forced perspective, and it's what somebody is imagining a camera will see. And then you get on the set and you go, oh, that doesn't work because, I imagined that when I dragged in another person, that they would be of a similar size. Oops. Oh, that's the camera bar that we're seeing. Let's dolly around that. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know.
Again, this is one of those things that seems like a pain, but it's
Yeah,
exactly what you need to know in the filming.
Exactly. I think one of the see the seat of the dolly got in the way. But anyways, so you need to know excuse me, let's talk intelligently. You need to know what the perspective is. So for
Right.
example, if I'm zoomed out so that I can see a lot, you'll see that, for example, she is much larger than he is, which looks a little weird.
Right.
And that's because I have a very small focal length, as you can see, 12 millimeters. If I want them of a similar size, I have to zoom in, which means that, of course, that I have so now they're much closer in relative size, so that when they're talking, it doesn't look bizarre. But now, if I want the same framing, I've got to pull everything back. So, for example, that would mean that I would need to take my whole dolly tracks and the dolly and move it back so that I get a similar size of the framing that I wanted with them in a same relative size.
Wow.
So that's the kind of stuff that you could draw this picture, and the picture looks, perfectly fine, no problem. But once you get on set, where you position the camera, what kind of lens you need, that kind of thing. And it may not be possible because there might be, for example, another wall right here, so that you may not be able to physically get the camera this far back.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that storyboards don't help you with at all. So there is this whole practical level of sanity checks and troubleshooting and all of that kind of thing that the program gives you that sort of doesn't exist with traditional storyboards. The second part of it is it gives so much more information, camera information, its height, whatever, angle of view, which helps all of the crew set up the shots much more efficiently. The lighting people know what the camera is going to see, so they know where to put their lights. The prop people, know that, the camera crew knows where to set it up. So everybody is much more efficient. And then the last part of it, or rather, which is kind of actually the first part of it, is it allows the director or cinematographer or whatnot to be much more creative because they can actually explore and experiment with various shots and options and discover things that they never thought of. Whereas a storyboard, it's fundamentally a static communication tool. I have an idea in my head, I write it down, I hand it to somebody, they go, okay, how do we shoot this? This becomes a much more integrated part of the process, a much more creative part of the process, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. This is really cool.
That's why we won the Cool App of the Month.
That's right. Fantastic. So you're the person that made the decisions about what to happen, and you also did the programming as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm the my technical title is lead program architect, also president, which basically is a fancy word meaning I own the company, can do whatever the hell I want. No, so I have a background in filmmaking. And I wrote an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Woohoo!
Yeah, well, the story for it. And I did an ABC movie of the week that I got paid for, but didn't get produced. Typical filmmaking stuff. Anyways, so I think have a real handle as to what our clients want, and I talk to them a lot. So I am the one who decides what the program's going to do and how it's going to do it. And I work entirely in Delphi, oddly enough. So the entire interface that you see here was done in Delphi. And then we have a Macintosh programmer, C++, who is a former professor of mathematics, and he does all the core 3D stuff. James Walker, give him a shout out. He does all the core 3D stuff as a cross-platform engine. He supplies me a DLL and an SDK, and basically I hook them up in Delphi, and I figure out, the interface as to what things should look like, and then tell him what I want. He gives me the core 3D stuff, and then he goes back and copies my interface, because when we started this whole thing, Delphi was not cross-platform, and so that's been our work process for the past 9 years.
Okay.
But pretty much, with the exception of the stuff in the middle, which is the 3D stuff, which is supplied by his engine and is integrated with Delphi. So basically what happens is he has a 3D world in OpenGL. I supply an OpenGL window handle, which is this and this and this and this and that. Each one is a separate one. And then I take all of the mouse clicks, clicking down, etc., and pass that to an SDK. He passes that to the engine, and it all acts seamlessly to create what you see here.
Sure.
But all of this kind of stuff, like we have, for example, full lighting control so that I can move where the sun is, which doesn't make much sense on an interior, but and all of this kind of stuff, this is all pure Delphi, again, feeding into the engine. We can add fog if we want for no apparent reason other than it's cool. Um, so yeah, so all of this is Delphi, and it works really well with the process of integration.
Sure. And I've seen lots of different 3D engines, some of them which are written in Delphi and such, but I guess it makes sense to have that written in C++ so that you can share that between your Mac and your Mac developer and your Delphi developer.
Right, and also, as I said, he's a professor of mathematics who is the guy you want doing 3D stuff.
Right.
Because the math on it can be pretty complex.
Yep.
And that was the program language, he was, used to working in. And because it was so easy to integrate, it, just seemed like the way to go.
So I've got to imagine that when you show this to somebody that has been doing paper storyboards, they're just probably go crazy and can't wait to buy it.
Yeah. I mean, people definitely, definitely are like, oh my God, I had no idea that, what this could do or why, or how easy it is. Because that's another thing that we certainly get a lot of people who think, oh God, 3D, using a 3D program. If you've ever used something like 3ds Max or Maya or one of the real 3D programs, they're incredibly complex. They're incredibly powerful, but they're incredibly complex. And we really wanted to focus on ease of use so that the filmmaker can keep thinking like a filmmaker and not think like a 3D modeler or an animator or whatever.
Exactly.
So that's why all of our controls are, labeled in filmmaking terms, because that keeps them focused on the image and what they're doing and not so much on using the program. At least that's our attempt.
Yeah, well, I noticed that when going through this, because I've tried to use some of those high-end 3D tools before, and I noticed that the user interface and the use paradigm really finds that perfect middle ground between all the power of Maya and flexibility, and brings it to the right spot, it feels like, for doing what you're trying to do, right? So we're not trying to make it look like photorealistic 3D rendering here.
Right.
We're just trying to convey this. And the fact that you can change the person's facial expression and move their arms around, it's like, wow, that's just so cool. And sure, there's a half dozen or a dozen facial expressions, but, that's all you need.
Well, it's actually much more than that.
Oh, is it?
I just showed you the quick and dirty interface, which is our expression wheel, which is basically the way it works, and you saw it on set, is the farther away from the center it is, the stronger the expression is.
Yeah.
So real happy, slightly happy. But then you can mix and match and build your own stuff, and so that wrinkle his nose, whatever, so that you can go crazy.
Wow.
And make stuff that looks really bizarre. You could actually, I can create anything I want. I can move his eyes, and so that you can go nuts with it if you want. I can even make his body more buff. I can make him fat. I can have a whole different variety of clothing. I can age him.
Well, this looks like you could almost make a movie with this. It feels like, with the tweening and all that stuff you're doing.
Yeah, and people do. I mean, people, a lot of people have done that kind of stuff. I mean, it gets into, a lot of work if you're really doing sort of animation, because animation is a huge amount of work. I mean, the tweening makes it a lot easier, but we certainly do have a lot of people do make movies often to raise money or to convince people that they have the chops to do it.
Sure. to show the story that it looks great in their mind, but as soon as they can make it into something someone else can experience, then all of a sudden it makes it more real. Yeah.
Right. We actually had a director who did Carmen 3D, which was a 3D stereo 3D version of the opera Carmen, shot at the Royal Opera House in London. And they were very leery about the whole process because they'd had some very bad 3D done before. And so he actually took a whole dance sequence at the beginning of Carmen and painstakingly animated the whole thing in FrameForge, set all the 3D parameters so that it looked really rich with good depth, and basically then rendered the whole thing out at HD resolution. They projected it at the Royal Opera House on their pull-down screen in the actual auditorium to show what they planned. And basically, I was told they pretty much fell off their seats and said, "Where do we sign?" So, and you could probably find that on the web on YouTube if you look for Carmen 3D and have a set of anaglyph glasses lying around, the red blue glasses, or have a 3D monitor lying around, as we all do. So people do it at different levels, and other people just really rough it out. Like the director who did the TV show Leverage, he would board his stuff over the afternoon, and he wouldn't care really about expressions or costumes. He would just, focus on the camera angles and, the actual production value rather than, or production issues rather than making the picture look pretty.
Right.
So you could use it at a whole ton of different levels and that's part of what we try and do with the program is make it so that there's, this very easy level of setting the expression here with just clicking and dragging a little bit, and, we get our enraged and, so on. Or we have the much more in-depth level where if you actually click it, you can then go in and, build and combine things. Sure. So, there's a lot of that idea behind it is put a lot of the easy stuff up front and then put a little bit more of the power under the hood. And, as people say, "Oh, I wish it did this," we say, "Oh, well, it already does." That kind of thing.
That's the best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So besides the integrating with the 3D engine, is there any other bits in the Delphi side that maybe might be of interest to people? Or like, for example, the controls down at the bottom, are all these drawn by manually, or are you using some sort of library? Or
no, these are all drawn manually. Basically, I came across this really brilliant design style, which I don't know if everybody knows about. But basically what we have is these are all images, and they all have several states. They have the what we call the hot state, which is when it's all split up into the various buttons. So in a dolly, you can dolly in, you can dolly left, you can right and left. I can speak. You can dolly back, etc. So all of those buttons, they each have a down state, and so that's combined of about 5 or 6 different images, and then we have a throttle that's another set of images and whatnot. But what we have underlying this is, imagine a circle with 4 different colors. And so when we have the mouse moving, all we do is we look at the pixel of the color under the mouse in this mapping image.
And it's like a mask, right?
It's a mask, but it's completely invisible.
Sure.
So basically, as I move the mouse, I say, "Oh, it's red." That means the mouse is over the top button. So it's a great way of dealing with irregular shapes.
Wow.
Like, how do you figure out whether the mouse is in this specific button, which is like this bizarre curve and whatnot? And the answer is it's very easy, because underlying that we have the same shape in a specific color. So if we just look at the pixel that the mouse is over, we know what it's over.
Sure.
So all of that's done in Delphi, and it works really well.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And then other stuff is more standard, drop downs and whatnot. Well, we do actually use a skidding library, because this dates back originally before Delphi had all the integrated stuff. So it's alpha tools, and that gives us this kind of cool brushed aluminum look, which is of course a little passe, but But a lot of it we've kind of rolled by hand, and that's one of the really cool things about it is we can build these really complex specific controls in Delphi very easily. Again, sort of I create them in Delphi, and then my poor Mac programmer has to figure out how to do it on his end.
But Delphi's kind of like FrameForge in that regard, right? Is it makes it really easy to do,
right?
Get started, and then it's like, oh, but I want to do cool controls. Well, you can do that too. It's not that much harder, It's like, oh wow, look, I've done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we constantly have this, okay, let's put in this new feature, and we're sort of both doing it. I win. But that's because I have better tools than he does, not because I'm a better programmer.
Yes. Yes.
So
now, what version of Delphi did you start developing this in?
5.
Delphi 5. Okay, wow. So it's been around a while.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think this went long, but this was so cool. I just was so excited to see everything. Anything you want to add or comment about before we go?
No, I think that wraps it up. Check us out at storyboardbetter.com.
Okay.
And then we have a YouTube channel and all sorts of good things.
I'll include all that details in the blog and post, and then put some links up on the screen too for everybody.
Right. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.